Okay. Next division, AFC North. Bengals 9-8 last year, missed the playoffs. They were 6-3 at home, 3-5 on the road. Plus minus win total 10.5 wins. They do have the sixth easiest schedule in the NFL, and last year their point differential was minus 18. Cleveland Browns made the playoffs at 11-6. Lost at Texans wild card weekend. They were 8-1 at home, 3-5 on the road. Plus minus total is 8.5 wins. They have the third hardest schedule in the NFL, and their point differential was plus 34 last year. Baltimore Ravens lost in the AFC title game to Kansas City. They were 6-3 at home, 7-1 on the road. Plus minus total this year is 11.5 wins. Fourth hardest schedule in the NFL this year, and their point differential last year was plus 203. I think that's the most in the league last year.
That's the most, yeah.
And then rounding out the division, Pittsburgh Steelers, 10-7, made the playoffs. 5-4 at home, 5-3 away. Plus minus total 8.5 wins. They have the hardest schedule in the NFL this year. Oh, and this was it. They were 10-7 last year, but their plus minus their point differential was minus 20.
Wow.
So there you go.
Yeah.
You take this one first, my man.
Yeah, so I got the Ravens on top. I think the Ravens are a special team that people have to start taking seriously. They won the division last year. I know the division has been musical chairs with the Bengals and the Ravens, and the Browns. But when you look at like truly the Ravens, what they're doing well, yes, they got rid of, some of their pieces offensively. But I think like when you look at who they added, I mean, Derrick Henry is a guy that, pops up right off the page. He is the perfect guy for this system. When you think of Derrick Henry, you think of a back that can absolutely torture defenses physically and abuse them mentally. And Lamar Jackson and the way he kind of shapes up his position at the quarterback slot, he's a hell of a player that can do all the things right. And it's just a matter of his decision making. He's going to have to make the right decisions in that offense. He's going to have to get Zay Flowers included early on. He's going to have to utilize Mark Andrews quite a bit because they're a little bit short on the wide receivers position. But again, you look at their defense, it's every single year, they're always in the mix. They're always a team that's going to be flirting with a top 10 defense. They're always going to be a team that's going to have a top 5 running game. And Lamar Jackson has showed day in and day out of last year that he's more than capable of taking MVP every single year. And when it comes down to the Baltimore Ravens, it's just going to have to be, can they take their time throughout the season? They're going to have a tough schedule. They're going to have a tough time, but I have them at 13-5 because I think they're a tough enough team, to get through, the tough times. And, I compare it to like the Houston Texans with DeMeco Ryans. They have a culture. They have a winning mentality. They've proven that they can win. They have like the demeanor of just going out there and smashing every team that they could possibly play against. And John Harbaugh is a coach that you want to play for, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's cocky or not. He's a guy that always knows how to win, and he always puts his best foot forward and puts his best players in the best system to succeed. So the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, I had the Bengals at 10-7. I said it last year. I know their, plus minus was, I believe, at 10.5. And I said under, and I'm going to stick to that. I think they're at 10-7. I think the Browns are matching them at 10-7. And then I have the Steelers at 9-8. Again, the Steelers just got Justin Fields and they got an aging Russell Wilson. You got to go up. You got to go out and try to shore up that offensive line. And they have George Pickens on the outside. We get it. They got rid of Deontay Johnson, who was a pretty good wide receiver for them. 1,000-yard receiver, I believe, 2 seasons ago. So I just look at it as not enough in that division for the Steelers. And I think it's highly competitive for sure with the Bengals and Browns. But again, I think the Ravens are the best team. And I think they're the best team by 3 games. So I got the Ravens at 13-5.
All right, this is the first one where we differ. I'm going to go Cleveland Browns. for the North.
Wow.
And the reason why I do is I think with the football under his belt. Now, look, I know it wasn't great that he had arm soreness today, but I do think I think Deshaun's going to be back, and I think that he's not going to be the Deshaun of old. Okay, I don't think he has to. By the way,
No.
I think he basically has to get his guys in space, and he needs to just be healthy. Right, that defense is going to bring it everywhere they go. Myles Garrett, Darius Smith on the edges. They're going to put pressure on the quarterback, and I think they're fast enough to where they can match up well with Baltimore and all of that RPO stuff and so on and so forth that they're going to have. I think similar to the AFC East, I think I think Cleveland's going to be able to get off to a faster start than I think Baltimore will. So if you look at the first 5 games of the Ravens' schedule, at Chiefs, home Raiders, at Cowboys, home Bills, at Bengals. That's kind of a tougher opening stretch. Oppose that with Cleveland. Cleveland starts off with Dallas at home, at Jacksonville, home Giants, at Raiders, at Commanders. So they have a pretty favorable first 5 games of the year. And I think last year their road record had a lot to do with the influx at the quarterback position. Right? They had a bunch of people get hurt, and eventually they ended up on Joe Flacco. So typically on your away games, yes, you're going to rely on your defense, but you're also going to need a quarterback to be able to play point guard and to get everybody in open space. Whatever they get out of Nick Chubb this year, he might be a mutant. I don't know, because he had if you want to throw up in your mouth a bit, go watch when he got hurt last year on Monday Night Football. It was absolutely disgusting. But I think Jerome Ford is going to be a sneaky sleeper going off of last week's podcast.
Yep.
And for as much as I dogged Jerry Jeudy last week, and I made fun of you about it, he doesn't have to be the number one guy, because Amari Cooper's there. He's there. David Njoku with that running game, with that defense. And I think Deshaun just has to be average for them to be a top tier. I think Cleveland's going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's my number 1 pick. I think they go 13-4. I think the Ravens go 12-5. I think they're a game behind. And I think that 3-5 for them on the road last year was very strange. And I think now, if they can still go 7-2 at home, 7-1 at home, whatever the home away ends up being, and they can go like 5-3, 6-2, something like that on the road, I think they'll have the win total to get there. As far as Cleveland goes, this is T. Higgins' last year, obviously. Jamar Chase isn't in camp yet.
Cincinnati. Yep.
Sorry, it's Cincinnati. And the Bengals haven't done enough on the offensive line to keep Joe Burrow upright for me to trust them at any point in the conversation at all. And I think Joe Mixon is going to hurt them a lot more than people think. I think Zach Moss is going to be okay. And I think, what's the other guy? Brown for them? Chase Brown. Yep. I think he'll be fine, but I think that's a lot to put the load on him so early. And there's just a lot of Cincinnati Bengal stuff going on in Cincinnati Bengal camp that I don't like the juju coming out. And look, I think Pittsburgh's gonna suck. I think they're gonna not be good. If you have two, the old adage is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. I think ultimately Justin Fields is probably going to take that job just because of the athleticism because of that. But their offensive line through camp has been terrible. George Pickens is their number 1 wide receiver. Freiermuth is a good safety blanket, but he's never, set the world on fire before.
Yeah.
And look, and with a crappy offensive line that they have, even though they have Arthur Smith now as the offensive coordinator, and he likes to run the ball, I just don't know if they have the offensive line to be able to do it. So look, their plus minus last year was -20, and they were 10-7. I think this is a substantial regressionary year for them. I have Cincinnati at 9-8, and I think this is going to be the first losing season under Mike Tomlin. I have them at 5-12, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think
Wow,
they're going to be
5-12.
I think they're going to be absolutely trash. If they're not going to be able to throw the ball and they don't have any weapons, and it sounds like Brandon Ayuk is going to go back to the 49ers. I think they're at the finish line with that deal.
Yeah.
There's no offensive weapons. You have a crappy offensive line and a running back that's not going to be able to find any holes, and a quarterback that both quarterbacks have giant question marks. I just don't feel confident about that whatsoever. So, I have Cleveland. Yeah, I have Cleveland, and I have Cleveland being the number 1 overall seed.
If I may jump in about Cincinnati real quick. So, obviously, Jamar Chase got drafted in 2021. Do you know who was available in 2021 for that draft? Penei Sewell. So, I think it's no, surprise that Joe Burrow tore his ACL in that year, right? So I think you got to make sure that you're keeping Joe Burrow upright. I think they did an okay job in free agency, not the best offensive line. But, man, I think they're going to be kicking themselves for years because Penei Sewell, as you can see in Detroit, he's a special guy. How special is he? Is he special more than Chase? Maybe not as far as receiving goes, but
maybe for that team, though.
For that team, right?
Maybe fit. For that team, 100%.
Yeah.
All right. AFC South to round up the AFC. We have the Colts. Last year they were 9-8. They lost Week 18 at home to the Houston Texans, who won the division on a insanely, if I could have it, a second chance. Gardner Minshew wide open in the flat, just missed him on 4th down. Yeah, it was just a kick in the dick for the entire Colts fan base. They were 4-5 at home, 5-3 on the road. Plus minus win total is 8.5. They do have the 7th easiest schedule in the NFL, and their point differential last year was -19. Jacksonville Jaguars 9-8, missed the playoffs. 4-5 at home, 5-3 on the road. Plus minus win total is 8.5. They have the 14th easiest schedule in the NFL, and their point differential last year was +6. Houston Texans won the division, made the playoffs, got to round 2, beat the doors off the Cleveland Browns in wild card weekend, and that was kind of C.J. Stroud's welcome party for the rest of the NFL. They were 6-3 at home, 4-4 on the road. Plus minus win total is 9.5 wins. They do have the 7th hardest schedule in the NFL. Their point differential last year was +24. And lastly, the Tennessee Titans, 6-11 last year, missed the playoffs, 5-4 at home, 1-7 on the road. Plus minus win total at 6.5 wins. 6th hardest schedule in the NFL this year, and their point differential was -62 last year.